At 8:46 a.m. on a clear September morning, the world stood still. Two planes heading into the heart of New York City changed our skyline forever. 9/11 isn't just a date. It's the day etched in our history, marking a chapter of profound tragedy and incredible resilience. Today, we're going to dive deep into the untold stories of that day, the moments you might not have heard about. It was the morning of September 11th. American Airlines Flight 11 took off from Boston, heading for Los Angeles. On board were 92 people, including 11 crew members and 81 passengers. Within about 15 minutes of takeoff, we now know that 5 of those passengers were hijackers who took control of the plane. One of them was Mohammed Atta, an Egyptian national who was a trained pilot. He took control of the cockpit and flew the plane directly toward the World Trade Center, the pride of New York, and once the tallest building in the world. At 8:46 a.m., the plane crashed into the North Tower. Just 17 minutes later, a second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, also hijacked by 5 men, struck the South Tower. By this time, President George W. Bush, who was visiting a school in Florida, was informed that the country was under attack. Bush remained in the classroom for the next 7 minutes, a period that drew much criticism later, as the news of the attacks spread globally. Soon after, a third hijacked plane, American Airlines Flight 77, was crashed into the Pentagon, the headquarters of the U.S. Department of Defense, at 9:37 a.m. This prompted the immediate shutdown of the entire U.S. airspace. All planes in the air were ordered to land at the nearest airport. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower, weakened by the fire and the impact, collapsed. Meanwhile, a fourth hijacked plane, United Airlines Flight 93, was heading towards Washington, D.C. It was believed the hijackers were targeting either the White House or the U.S. Capitol. However, the passengers on this flight learned about the earlier attacks from phone calls with their families. They made a brave decision to fight back against the hijackers. Though the full details of the struggle in the cockpit remain unclear, what is certain is that the passengers' actions prevented the plane from reaching its intended target. It crash-landed in an empty field in Pennsylvania, saving countless lives. At 10:28 a.m., the North Tower also collapsed. By the end of that horrific morning, more than 3,000 people had died and over 6,000 were injured. The terrorist group Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, was responsible for the attacks. While bin Laden initially denied responsibility, he later publicly acknowledged and justified the attacks, citing U.S. interference in the Middle East and its support for Israel as his motivations. The aftermath of 9/11 led to some shocking changes that directly affect us all. 6 weeks after the attacks, the U.S. Congress passed the Patriot Act in a hurry. This act gave the government vast power to spy on its citizens, accessing personal records without a warrant and eroding some judicial oversight. It also gave the government a tool to silence dissenters under the guise of fighting terrorism. Airport security changed forever after that day. Before 2001, security checks were minimal. You could arrive just 15-30 minutes before your flight. After 9/11, we saw the introduction of full-body scans, mandatory personal ID checks, strict limits on liquids, and reinforced cockpit doors. Explosive detection systems were deployed nationwide, and pilots were even authorized to carry weapons. The war on terror that followed led the U.S. to invade Afghanistan to hunt down Al-Qaeda and later Iraq. While Osama bin Laden was eventually killed in 2011, these wars cost trillions of dollars, thousands of American soldiers' lives, and countless civilian lives. Furthermore, these attacks fueled a new wave of xenophobia and hate crimes, particularly against Muslims and South Asians. Many people were arrested, detained without evidence, and tortured in the name of national security. The American public largely supported these measures out of fear. This created a cycle where extremism bred more extremism, as those who felt targeted or victimized were pushed towards radicalization. As the saying goes, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Even though Osama bin Laden is gone, organizations like ISIS have risen, showing that killing one terrorist doesn't end the cycle of revenge. The biggest lesson here for all of us is to never let fear blind us to reality. We must never allow any government to use an act of terrorism as an excuse to exploit our freedoms, as many critics argue happened with the Patriot Act and government surveillance. The choices we make in response to tragedy can define us just as much as the tragedy itself.